So I have some thoughts on the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, a few questions, some interesting observations, and even a response to a quote-unquote hate comment from my last video, which relates to what I'm going to be talking about in this video. But that response to a comment will come towards the end of the video, which you want to stay tuned for that. So let's get into it. So welcome to my channel. My name is Nick Zangle. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. This is the channel where we have honest, unfiltered conversation about a variety of topics, from social media, influencer news, to politics, to pop culture and culture in general. And we do it every Monday and Friday at noon Pacific Standard Time. So make sure to come back every Monday and Friday for a new video on all those different things. So with that said, let's get into the topic today. So my first thought was, it was very much a focus of the inauguration, was how historic it was having the first female Asian American, African American, all the whatever the first were, regarding Kamala Harris as Vice President of the United States of America. Whether you like her or not, whether you like any those labels, whether you use them or not, we have to pause and say that this is historic. We have to recognize that, just as we did with Barack Obama being the first black president. Unfortunately, we know now, looking back, what happened during the Obama presidency and a lot of the bad things that came out of it. And so I hope that Kamala, being in this administration with Joe Biden, turns out different. But she is a close associate to the Obamas, so I'm not holding my breath. But of course, a lot of people, the big problem is they don't feel like this is a legitimate election. So I know a lot of people think that. So I'm going to take this as it is historic for our country. I hope they do well. We'll see. But on that same note, regarding this whole administration, some people have fears over Congress, both houses of Congress, both chambers, being in control by the same party that has the executive branch. To me, you can look at it as they have unchecked powers, but also you could see it as it may actually be hard for them to pass some of their extreme policies through the chambers of Congress, because they're both in a virtual tie pretty much. There's only a few seats in the majority of the Democrats, and the Republicans caught up and gained a lot of seats in this election. The Senate is tied, with the tie-breaking vote being Kamala Harris as the vice president. And so any fractures within either party in either chamber of Congress can have leverage at this point. So if you're a Republican who doesn't really like the mainstream Republican the way they're going, you could kind of vote with the other party, or vice versa. Someone in the Democrat Party can vote with the Republicans, and especially in the Senate, swing that vote either way, and actually kind of be this check that we need, and not get to the point where Kamala can just say, yes, I want this signed through, or no, I don't want this signed through, whatever the case may be. And so those few dissenters within the party that are kind of on the outside, or in their own party within a party from the populist side of things, whether it be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Rand Paul or Ted Cruz, who knows, these few dissenters support the idea that this checks and balance still exists. And if there's key policies that are in disagreement within a party, those could really shine in the next 2 years at least, until the midterm elections. So if anyone was concerned about unchecked powers, that's kind of my positive thought on it. But as far as Joe Biden's speech, his first speech as president, he mentioned that we are a good nation, we are good people at the end of the day. Now, the problem I had with this was, if I'm not mistaken, because I think I have a pretty good memory, the better part of the last nearly 2 years of his campaign, and many of his co-campaigners, I guess, that ran to defeat President Trump, over the past 2 years have been, and even before that, before they even started running, their whole platform has been, our nation is bad, we're racist, and we need, or racist and misogynist, whatever it is, and we need to completely overhaul the system, restart it, burn it down, and build it back up. And they've been villainizing all the people who have voted for President Trump or that have supported him since, even though maybe some of them hadn't voted for him in 2016 but did in 2020. They're villainizing like 70 plus million Americans in this election alone as they're bad people, they're evil. How could they vote for this quote unquote fascist, racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, whatever other phobia they want to throw at us? And I don't forget that. So him just saying, oh, we're a good nation and we're good people, that's the exact opposite of what you've been campaigning on. And you have been placating, pandering to the sector of America that truly believes that the system is against them and that we're all racist and that they'll never get ahead or whatever the case may be. But I will say, I will forgive them and everyone who has said these things if the tone changes and maybe they issue some kind of an apology or whatnot. I would be willing to accept it, but I don't think that's going to happen because that is what they campaigned on. And if they do apologize to the Trump supporters or to the people they've been villainizing, that won't be good within their own party. So they're kind of stuck right now, this establishment group of people that are trying to stay in power, and the people are not happy on both sides. One funny thing I thought that was interesting, and I've seen this a few different times, especially once Joe Biden became the nominee for the Democratic Party, he announced his official platform as the nominee. And it's almost like Biden at some points wants to say, make America great again. It's like his platform is very similar. It's just kind of a longer worded, more wrapped around version or more global version of that, I guess, a globalist version. And to me, it makes sense because Joe Biden is a career politician, been working in government, elected official government for nearly 50 years at this point. And so it is a very government thing to have more words than necessary, have more bureaucracy, more not efficient, not streamlined thing, as opposed to MAGA or Make America Great Again, which is created by a businessman who does branding and is very good at branding and marketing, which is why I think the MAGA movement and the Make America Great Again slogan is so powerful because it was created by someone who's good at branding and marketing. So I think that's very interesting, and it's like he almost wants to say Make America Great Again. I think even Trump's biggest dissenters know how smart of a slogan that was from 2016 even till now, and it's probably going to live on even past Trump's presidency because it is so powerful and it transcends Trump, if that makes sense. So a few questions I had regarding just the whole inauguration in general, and it will lead me into my observations later on. But a few questions I had was, one, why aren't we bashing this inauguration for being a super spreader event? If I remember correctly, every Trump rally, regardless of if most people were seen having masks or not, were considered super spreader events, even though the media decided to still cover them and show up. Events outside on the lawn of the White House were considered super spreader events, but this event on the steps of the Capitol wasn't considered a super spreader event. And even weirder is the event, I guess 2 weeks ago at this point, on January 6th, where it was a huge group of people, I didn't see very many masks at all, wasn't considered a super spreader event in the media as well. So to me, this adds to the whole, was the January 6th event, I don't want to say staged, but was it influenced by outside sources, outside forces, than just a group of Trump supporters that showed up at the Capitol just to make the whole Trump movement look bad? I think that's a very possible thing, because even when you go see groups of Trump people, some people are still wearing masks. I mean, it's not like there's no one ever wearing a mask at anything Trump related. So I thought that was very interesting that it seemed very, and the way that the pictures came out of the whole Capitol riot situation, they were angled really, really interestingly. They made sure the smoke was very prominent, or any of the tear gas, to make it look like they were burning it down. The sunlight, they kind of edited it. They put a filter on it to get the photo op. So in history, when we look back, it looks like, oh, this was such a bad day, and this is one of the worst days in history, blah, 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 blah. Even though it was bad, but it wasn't like 9/11 bad, or like being invaded by soldiers on foot on the sea, you know. So I don't know. It's just one thing I wanted to ask. And also, why aren't we questioning that this inauguration even happened with a crowd like that, even though they were spaced out outside with masks on? Because some of those things have been happening in other places, but they've been considered super spreader events or they've been shut down. So why is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's inauguration okay and not able to be questioned with thousands of troops there too, but nothing else is okay, or we can't question that, but we have to question everything else and get outraged over that. And I mean, I know most of you probably know the answer to that, and I'll just give a very brief answer from my perspective, which is that it's a means to an end, ideologically and politically. All right. Now, as far as some of the accounts of the inauguration, since virtually no one was there to be like witness it in person, and as I'm going to talk about in a few seconds, most people did not watch online either. All the accounts I'm seeing show that this inauguration was not that popular on, offline, in person. So it makes me really question, how can you get the most votes of anyone in the history of the United States? Granted, we have the biggest population we've ever had, so that could factor into it. But how can you get the most votes of anyone, any candidate in history, be this progressive, forward-thinking person that supposedly proved Trump as this one-term fluke of a president, fluke of a movement, or that he wasn't as popular as he was saying, but then dismiss the Trump inauguration from 2016 when all the numbers on and offline pointed to it being the most popular, or one of the most popular inauguration ceremonies in history? Because Biden didn't have anyone really show up. They covered that, they kind of justified that as COVID concerns and security threat, that they curated this narrative out of the January 6th events at the Capitol to kind of justify there not being anyone there and to justify the troop presence to keep people away, and it clearly worked. But also, that many people did not watch across all the platforms online or on mainstream media. So you would think that those numbers that would have been in person would be watching online, but it wasn't. Either one wasn't that great. So how can you be the most popular candidate and have the most votes ever, but then have an unpopular inauguration in-person ceremony and online, when we have this supposedly progressive person in charge, where progressivism, you would think that we would have everyone watching because it's so easy and we're so far advanced in society with all these means to watch and whatnot, or all this technology to maybe allow people in person and do it in a safe way, even with the security threats. So there's a lot of mixed messages here, and I'm not one that doesn't see them. I know some people just take things for what they are, which I can't help them. I hope they wake up. Something will trigger them to wake up to what's really going on, but that was kind of my thoughts on the size and the optics of the inauguration. And also, here's another point, if Biden truly had the support of the American people, meaning a legitimate election where he was the clear winner, why did they need to block off most of DC for a security threat? Trump was, according to the media and to his opponents, was one of the least likable, most hated people to ever be president, but he doesn't even need that level of security for anything he does. So you have to kind of, I hope they're at least asking themselves, why are we having this level of threat, and why are we needing this level of response to that threat if we were the duly elected administration and that many people actually have our backs? Now, before we get into the comment response for my last video, my hate comment response, I had a few quick little notes of observations regarding a few of the prominent people that were at the inauguration ceremony, and I'm just going to go down the list really quickly before we head to the next part of this video. But the first one was Lady Gaga. I said she is, I'm going to be reading off because I made sure I made them like bullet pointy, but I said, interesting fashion choice, but it is Lady Gaga, and I would not expect anything less from her regarding fashion, even in an inauguration. And it still looked great, so I'm not complaining about that. She has a beautiful voice, but I am not sure that it was a live performance. Maybe she recorded a live performance and they played it back and then she was lipping her live vocals. I still don't like her as a person or her politics, but I still like her music. Okay, Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo. I thought she did good. Almost changed my mind about my opinion of her doing well when she inserted a line from her own song, Let's Get Loud, in America the Beautiful, I believe was the song, because she kind of did My Country 'Tis Thee, I think, and then My Country 'Tis Thee, This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land, and then went into America the Beautiful. But once that line passed, because she held out Let's Get Loud, or whatever the note is, and then but once it passed, it made sense in the song. I don't remember the lyric that came after, but it said like "Let's get loud for America the Beautiful" kind of thing. So I thought that made sense after I waited to judge until the end. But she was definitely not singing loud, in my opinion. I think they cover this very easily by. There's a lot of things I'm not an expert in television production or media production, but I do know that there was a lot of wide shots and not close up and pan to the audience and pan to the Capitol, show the American flag, show the National Mall, not showing like up close in their face of their microphone and their mouth. So, I mean, the mouth and microphone part could have been pre-recorded because the angle of that didn't show the audience. So that could have been partially pre-recorded, right? Or at least, so there's that. And I do know that the reason that sometimes they do that is because of the weather. It's cold. If it's cold weather, their vocal cords aren't as warmed up and whatnot, and it is a huge stage. Even if not as many people watch this time, that you don't want to mess up. So I think Beyonce had a scandal about this, and we learned that this was an industry practice. During that, I don't remember if it was Obama's first or second inauguration, but I think it was the second one, because I think Aretha Franklin was the other one, if I'm remembering correctly. So, let's move on. Garth Brooks, country music superstar. I liked his performance. What I thought was interesting and then I learned was he has performed for many presidents, going all the way back from what I believe to Ronald Reagan in the 80s. And he didn't perform at Trump's inauguration, but he performed for Trump after that because of some scheduling issues. But liked his performance. Interesting how he had performed for a lot of different presidents, but has remained friends with a lot of people there. It was interesting to see him like shake hands and say hi to like Obama, Bush, and I mean, we know now that they're not too different, but I thought that was very interesting. And he's friends with Trump, but they still haven't canceled him, or at least he's performed for Trump. So to me, this indicates that Garth Brooks, something that I've kind of known for a long time, but he's a very smart businessman, trying to be friends with as many people as possible. And to me, this is probably the reason why he has stuck around for so long. So, anyways, Joe Biden's speech, the next thing. To me, I thought it was boring. Apparently, Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, thought so too. There's clips of him kind of nodding off during the speech. And I thought, like I noted before, Joe Biden's speech had a lot of contradictions to what he campaigned on and what we've learned about him and his family and his time in office over the last decades, about corruption and all these other things. Granted, I am going to be fair and say that although Trump mostly kept to his campaign promises, they did take on some different tones from his campaign to his inaugural speech, and I think that's a good thing. So I hope Joe Biden, his speech is what he actually does. I hope so. And then as far as Kamala Harris goes, what was interesting about this was during her swearing in, when she was giving her oath of office, Kamala pronounced her name the way I would say it, Kamala, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who was doing the oath or whatever, said her name differently. And I distinctly remember people getting upset when Kamala's name was said wrong or said in the wrong way. And so this to me indicated that this is the precedent we're using. So if anyone says Kamala's name different than Kamala and we get hate or called out for it, I'm not taking it. Because the rule is Sonia Sotomayor said it wrong and no one corrected her, no one got mad at her. So anyone else that says it wrong, you can't get mad at them. It's just fair. Alright, Mike Pence. So I thought it was a great show of sportsmanship, leadership, whatever, to show up to the inauguration of the opponent, if you will. But I was confused by the applause for Mike Pence, considering he was friends with the quote-unquote boogeyman enemy. So it does make me question kind of what that was all about. I have my theories, but I'll just keep them to myself for now. But if you have any more theories on that, go to the comment section to let me know. As far as President Trump goes, I wish he had attended, but I also understand why he didn't. Because, I mean, one, he said he's never going to concede, and he doesn't want to admit that he lost. That's, I think, a very clear thing. And I think his good excuse could have been, well, if I'm telling my supporters to stay away, why should I go? Because if I'm telling my supporters not to come, then I'm not going to come either. So I get why he didn't go, but I wish he would have showed up, of course. As far as Amy, I have two more people, and then we'll go into the next part. But Amy Klobuchar, who was kind of the moderator or the MC, if you will, forget, but there's an official term for it. I don't remember. But I wish she would stop and others would stop grouping me and some others into this all of us on whatever issue they're talking about, especially something I don't agree with, because they were saying the moment we've all been waiting for, the inauguration of Joe Biden. And I was like, I don't know if we've all been waiting for it, but we're accepting that it is what it is. And her voice will always annoy me. Just is what it is. But I will try to look past that every time she is speaking to kind of hear the contents of what she's saying, not how she's saying it or the tone of her voice. And then the last observation about someone that attended the inauguration was Bernie Sanders. And I realized this when Access Hollywood, their YouTube channel, or it's just Access now, the entertainment news site here in the United States, posted an article about Bernie Sanders' mittens, that people were saying it was a fashion statement or whatever, that he was they're trying to paint him as this like fashion trendsetter in his age group kind of thing. And that's at least how I interpreted it. But apparently those mittens did enough to distract people from the fact that, or at least mainstream media, from the fact that he looked lonely, he had a crooked mask on, and he looked like just this little lonely communist sitting by himself. So I guess all you have to do is wear mittens to distract people. I don't know, with the interesting pattern. Who knows? But before we get into the comments, my comment response to a quote-unquote hate comment from my last video, which relates to a lot of what I just talked about. If you are still watching, make sure to head down and give this video a like before we continue on. And it takes 2 seconds. Go ahead and do it, and then we'll be back right now. So, response to my comment in the last video, because it had to do with this topic that I talked about today of a new president and kind of a new administration. So at first I want to actually read the full comment, because what's weird about this comment is it is not really showing up. Showing up in my dashboard for YouTube, but for whatever reason it doesn't seem to be showing up when I scroll through all the comments of the last video. So I think it says it's public, so we'll see. Hopefully you find it. But anyways, this comment is from Julia Sugarbaker. Her channel icon has she has a red jumpsuit on, her arms are crossed, has big hair, so it looks like an older picture. But she says, quote, "Seriously, you want answers to your extreme rhetorical yet somehow still morally bankrupt questions? Okay. Schools are teaching kids core values for the same reason they're teaching kids how to read and add, because we as a society all benefit from an emotionally and academically educated population. And the Capitol attack was a bunch of racists. The proof? The nooses, the Confederate flags, the 3% patches, 3%er patches, the Proud Boys insignias, the Camp Auschwitz shirts, the men chasing a black Capitol police officer up the stairs, calling him a filthy N-word. Open your eyes, Nick, or cling to your ideology, but to even insinuate there's no proof of racists in the Capitol is morally bankrupt," in capital letters, and in all caps, morally bankrupt, and just laughably wrong. Katie sucks, referring to Katie Joy. She's a hypocrite and a covert narcissist. That doesn't mean the points you try to paint in this video are acceptable. Do better. I replied just with okay, with the exclamation point, because I didn't know how I wanted to respond, and I chose this means to respond because of a few reasons, which I'll point out in a few seconds. So, first, the tone of the paragraph, of the first paragraph, that first little part, was clearly a little bit aggressive, so that's why I read the entire message as kind of this aggressive comment. And the all caps at the end seemed to prove that I was right. And as far as the questions, the rhetorical questions asked in my last video, they were something to the extent of, do you think schools should be teaching core values parents should be teaching? And do you think a new president coming into office will change everything overnight? Now, clearly, I think these two questions triggered her from my interpretation because, I mean, the answer to those questions are no and no, but clearly she is most likely a Democrat or a liberal or a Joe Biden supporter, and she didn't like probably that I pointed out that these two things are no's. But to me, this is all a result of this oversimplified approach that we have to seeing people when we don't know them very well, or we just see a little glimpse of them. And to me, it is a lot easier to kind of paint someone or put them in this box or label them easily and just associate that label with one thing without having to try to get to know someone. And so you can look at me and say, oh, he's white, so he must be racist, or someone else is white, so they must be racist, rather than either one, thinking that maybe as a preconceived notion, but being open to learning the opposite, and maybe that opposite is the truth. Or two, not judging someone based on the color of their skin, regardless of what shade or lack of shade there is in it. So that's kind of a general thing that can apply to sex or gender or skin color or nationality or clothing, whatever. And so that was my first thing I wanted to touch on with that comment. As far as the school situation, my thought was, if school was really preparing children to be academically and emotionally educated, why are we seeing mental health skyrocket and failure rates in school not changing for the better? And even to add on to that, why are we seeing people in public crying on the streets for not getting their way in society, or vandalizing things in society, or whatever other thing is bad that's being portrayed out there, that if you were an educated, emotionally mature or emotionally educated person, you probably wouldn't be handling your problems or your gripes with society in that way. So to me, that just proves going to school doesn't necessarily mean you are educated. And in this modern society where a public school classroom exists, that is not the only way to get educated, the only way to learn. And so when we have all these other options available, and if the other option is the best thing for that child or for that person to learn, and in the case of an underage child, if their parent deems that as the appropriate measure for them to learn, it should be accessible and it should be an option to them. And that's a whole other conversation on affordability and how to pay for it, and if it should be public, private, whatever. But that's my general thought on just education in general. And as far as reading and adding specific examples that Julia gave, those are skills. Those aren't core values. You need to know how to read and to add basic things to function in society. And the problem I see is, for too long, parents have been relying on the school system to parent their children. And when the pandemic forced parents and children to interact at home with the learning that was going on, virtual learning, I think a lot of parents, and you don't have to be a parent to know this, you just have to know a parent or know kids or know families. A lot of parents not only saw the reality of what their parenting was or how it was manifesting, but also the failure of the school system and how our school systems have strayed away from keeping and teaching basic skills like reading and like adding. So while it sounds virtuous and great to say that, quote, an educated populace, or not quote, but an educated populace is good for all, which I agree with, if that means that you're pushing for of education is not actually doing the intended job, that's not good. We need to find a different way. And to me, having all those other options to suit each person's specific needs or specific whatever goals is the way out of that. Now, as far as her response to my comments on the Capitol attack goes, I was referencing Katie Joy painting everyone that was at the Capitol that day as this group of racists. And Julia's examples of proof that there are racists there was referencing organizations that she clearly has been told are these villainous groups of extremist, racist, violent people. And just because there might be a few people that were there that were doing those things doesn't mean everyone that was a part of these organizations or everyone that was at the Capitol was these things. And sure, some people in those groups are probably using that group as a cover to carry out these internal gripes they have with society or the system or whatever. But to paint everyone there in such a manner, in her words, but in my opinion, is morally bankrupt of her to assume. So especially when we now have proof of people trying to stop, or at least trying to, or saying stop breaking the windows or stop trying to get into the Capitol. And we also have proof that a guy that was in the Capitol filming the murder of the woman from California that was killed in the Capitol from gunshot, he has a history of instigating violence in other parts of the country in 2020 at different big events like this, riots or protests, whatever you want to call them. He was on CNN being interviewed as a journalist on the ground or on the scene. So we have to look at it in all ways. You can't just pick and choose at this point. And I know we're not all perfect, and I'm not perfect either, but we need to call each other out when we're being a little stupid, okay? And along the same lines, if simply associating with a group or using a certain word, whether it actually results in some kind of action that could affect someone's livelihood or infringe on their rights, if you will, if that makes you a racist, for instance, that is unfit for society, then we have to point to you. And if you're a Joe Biden or Kamala Harris supporter, because Joe Biden has used racially insensitive words or racial slurs in the past, he's introduced legislation that has proven to hurt people of certain demographics, and Kamala Harris has also targeted vulnerable communities in her time in California, as well as being a descendant, from what I've read, of slave owners. So if you're going to point that at me, we have to hold the same standard to you. And it looks like if you're a supporter of that, according to your own logic, then you're probably all those things too. So you better be careful not to kind of self-inflict some things by not thinking about the repercussions if the shoe is on the other foot. And like I said earlier, it is way easier and way simpler to put people in these groups than to treat them as individuals. And I don't know Julia personally, who made this comment, and I have a feeling if we met, she probably wouldn't be speaking to me this way, or at least using some of the verbiage that she used in her comment. And I'm sure if I did meet her in person and she was acting this way, I probably don't know if I'd be able to respond like this because I didn't have time to think about it. But in the moment, I'd probably just... Actually, you know what? I would have said the same thing. I would have just said, okay, and walked away. Exactly what I did in the comment section. And along the racism line, if it is as widespread of a problem, racism, like blatant racism, I'm not talking about this unconscious bias or this whatever, cultural appropriation, or these insensitive things, or whatever these things are that are just more verbal and not like violent threats, which is not as widespread as what they're saying, the violence, I should say. If it is as big of a problem as you think it is, where all these large groups that you see, you think every one of them is racist, then one, why are you only calling out groups that you don't like politically, who are these big groups of people doing violent acts like this? And two, if everything is racist, then doesn't that mean that nothing is racist? And speaking of ideology, because she mentioned I'm clinging to my ideology, but one, I know that Joe Biden has been in elected office for nearly 50 years, so almost double my age in my life. And many of those years he has contributed to the problems that people seem to think have just appeared overnight as a result of a Trump presidency. And now we're supposed to believe that Joe Biden, the guy who's been in an elected office in the federal government for almost 50 years, is supposed to just solve everything now, even though he was vice president for 8 years too. So it sounds like to me, the one that needs to open their eyes is you, Julia, if you're watching this, but I don't know if that's it's probably going to fall on deaf ears at this point. And me asking questions that apply to anyone, regardless of ideology, running for the president of the United States or going to be president, that is not clinging to my ideology. That is just trying to state something that is true regardless of who is in that position that I was questioning. Because Trump couldn't fix everything alone in 4 years, and I sure as heck don't believe Biden will either. And they both have character flaws, but the policies of Trump were more aligned with what I want to see in America, or what the direction I want it to head in or back in, versus Biden. And so Morals, like, I think this has been said a few times. I forget who said it, but I think it's pretty common knowledge now, is oftentimes what's legal is not necessarily moral, and what is illegal is not necessarily immoral, if that makes sense. There's some give and take, or there's some overlaps there. And so you can call me morally bankrupt, but if our morals differ on certain things, then you call me morally bankrupt. I can just as easily say that to you if our morals are different. But I would hope that the pretext for you calling me morally bankrupt is based on facts and truth. And if it's not, and you learn the facts and truth, I would hope you would change that tone towards me and not just hate me for whatever reason. And in my opinion, it takes all of us to fix these things. I don't think Joe Biden is going to come in and be the miracle fixer. Obviously Donald Trump wasn't either, to the people that support him. And so painting everyone as racist or as uneducated isn't going to get us anywhere. And I really just responded with okay in that comment section, because I could sense that nothing I would ever say or was going to say in the type comment, because of the tone we were kind of, I think, probably would have, I interpreted her tone as aggressive, and she probably would have done the same to me. And that's why I did a video form. Would never be enough, and she probably wouldn't have responded anyway. Anyways, it would have been a headache yesterday that I didn't really need, because I had a pretty good day. And so that was that. So I thought I would nicely reply in video form and add it to this video that happened to be related to that comment, and turn that lemon into lemonade. So if you have made it all the way to this part of the video, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you are not already, wherever you are watching, and make sure to turn on post notifications, especially if you're on YouTube. You can ring that bell. But if you made it to this far in the video, especially this video, you are in for a treat, because I know many of you have been waiting for me to announce this special thing. And if you have read the description box of this video, very familiar name in a website name, and that happens to be my name, Nick Zangle. And so if you go to nickzangle.com, that is the official website for joining the mailing list that I am starting, because the reason I'm starting it, one, is to have a way to contact everyone no matter what, because big tech and the social media platforms are on a censorship streak. And if you watch this far in the video, you know that my views are not the ones that these big tech companies necessarily agree with. So in the case that they start just banning everyone who dissents from the mainstream narrative, I want to have a way to communicate with everybody. So head to nickzangle.com. It's linked in the description. The page that pulls up right away is the sign up list. It has the same graphic as my YouTube header and my Rumble header. All you need to sign up is an email. I would prefer a first name, and if you want a last name, but an email is all you really need. Type in an email, hit the red sign up button, and the most important step is to go to that email, find the confirmation email, and click the red button on that confirmation email to make sure that you are added to my list. The reason that's there is to make sure there's no spam or bots trying to sign up on the email list, so that way I'm only sending emails to people who are actually signed up and they're real people, and that's you. So that is to ensure that, and it's not going to be spammy or anything, it'll just be a notification system for important updates, for future live streams when that starts happening, for new videos, because I have seen a lot of people be subscribed and then YouTube unsubscribes them, or have your notifications on but you don't get the notification until like 4 days later. In this case, you'll get an email with the link to the video or whatever the case is. And no matter how YouTube thinks, because I think from what I understand, YouTube's notification system is not upload a video and it gets sent to all subscribers. Or all people who have notifications on. It's, what is it? I heard someone say it sends it out to a few of your subscribers, sees how many of them like it and click on it and watch at first, and then it starts sending it to more and more people, from what I understand, and then that's when it gets into the algorithm and gets shared with people who aren't subscribed and whatnot. So that is why I understand the notification system seems to not be working sometimes, but really it actually might be that's how they want it to work. Could be that they don't want their systems to be overloaded when the biggest YouTubers upload their video, to kind of keep their flow of like activity kind of consistent. and spread out throughout the few days to kind of let the peak times not be as high up and not let the lulls be too lowly. I don't know. Or it could be them really optimizing their system to make sure that good content gets pushed out, or to reward people who make videos that people like. And obviously to YouTube, that helps them, because if people like their platform, they stay on. So anyways, before you head out, make sure to head down, go to nickzengel.com. It's spelled exactly like my name here on YouTube. You'll know you're at the right website when the header banner looks exactly like my YouTube one. Put in an email, press sign up, go to your email and confirm that you want to sign up to get on the list, and let me know if you have any issues. I get those emails directly to me through the website, so it should all be good. And then let me know in the comment section what's going on, what your thoughts are, and I'd love to chat with all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this today. I know this one was a little bit longer, but there was a lot to say, a lot of thoughts, and a big announcement at the end, and I'm so excited for the future, no matter what happens. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, whatever time or whatever day you're watching this. I will talk to you on Monday in the next video and in the comment section every day. So bye-bye.